Hi everyone, and welcome to a new edition of We Are Sunderland with myself, Scott Wilson, and Dom Shaw. Hope you're all keeping well. A shout out straight away to our site sponsors, as ever, the Fans Museum in Sunderland and Cospex Opticians. Thanks so much for your support. If you can support them, then that's brilliant. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, then like, subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what you're thinking about. If you're listening on one of the various podcast platforms, then please rate and review. It does help us out. How are you doing, Dom? Christmas ready?
No. I'm not too bad, but it just comes round. It's this last week, isn't it? Where I think it was yesterday. I'm like, oh man, how are we a week ago?
I'm quite well on, actually. I'm quite well on, I've got to admit.
Yeah, well, you had an efficient day at it this week, didn't you?
I had a good day at it. Yeah. It's going to be one of those panicked weekend before club shop visits, innit? Get the calendar in, get the mugs in, get the top in for the kids. You know, that's the way to do it.
Just a load of annuals. Yeah, home game before game the last weekend before Christmas.
Textbook. Right, well, so we'll have a very quick look back at the weekend that was obviously Sunderland with that great comeback win at Swansea. We'll have a chat about a few topics that kind of are bubbling around at the minute, and then we will look ahead to the Norwich game this weekend, which is obviously Sunderland's last pre-Christmas game. Swansea, Dom, I mean, first 20 minutes, it looked like being an absolute horror show, but by the end, it's one of the best results of the season and probably more evidence of why Sunderland are absolutely banging it around it.
Yeah, and just more evidence of what we were saying last week about this team just being able to find a way. We talked about it in that Bristol City game, and then obviously roll forward 3 or 4 days, and you're doing that. And that just all helps. That just all helps to build belief, obviously in the stands, and kind of build momentum and this feeling of we might be onto something this year, but also in the dressing room, doesn't it? When you're, imagine the feeling of buoyancy in that dressing room when you snatch a point in the last minute and then go and win in that fashion. In terms of wins being a springboard, there's nothing more powerful than a win like that, is there? A come from behind win at a tough place to go as well. I mean, Swansea have, you know, they're not one of the better teams in the division, but they've pulled the finger out after a tough start, haven't they? They were looking up in the table, and after 20 minutes, you're kind of fearing the worst, and suddenly you're looking and thinking, well, it's only one win from a week that had the look of being a pivotal week. Well, roll forward an hour, and you suddenly the transformation in the mood is 7 points from 9, right smack bang there again at the top of the table. And suddenly it feels like that little blip, wobble, whatever it was, the run of draws, that's well and truly behind Sunderland now, isn't it? And win on Saturday, and you look, the top 2 is once again absolutely smack bang in the conversation, rather than any concern about what might be happening below.
Let's talk about a few of the things that kind of have come out of that game and are pertinent moving forward. I promised myself that we're not going to bang on about strikers and January and all of that in this vid. I promise you. So let's flip it on its head and say we've spent forever talking about that. Rigg, Neil, Bellingham. There's no reason why all 3 of them can't end this season with 10 goals each, is there? Which goes a fair way towards remedying the attacking problem.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And on song, when they're all fit and flying, is there a midfield you'd rather have in the Championship?
I don't think so.
I mean, Craig, we've talked about this before, when you think what they're going to be like in 4 or 5 years' time, but never mind that, how good they are now.
Yeah,
all 3 players would get in any Championship team, wouldn't there? There's no doubt about that. All 3 players would improve every Championship team. And there's several Premier League clubs. I mean, we'll get to it. You did the column this week, didn't you, on Rigg and Bellingham? But all 3 players would interest several Premier League clubs as well, wouldn't they? And I think we are probably guilty of getting bogged down too much with the centre forward talk, because I know this is probably the wrong conversation to have after conceding 2 goals in the first 20 minutes at Swansea, but how solid defensively Sunderland have been all season, so which has allowed them really to, even when they weren't firing up front, the blip that I talked about there was a run of draws rather than defeat.
Yeah.
They've got those solid foundations. And that midfield, and to think you've got Alan Brown still to come in there. We've got Salis Abdul Samed, who has played at the top level, still to come in. I mean, what you would say is you look at them and think, how the hell are either of them going to get in the team?
Wow.
Just to flesh out the squad. Which, yeah, like you say, especially with the goal involvements as well as those midfield players, does just take the pressure off the forwards a little bit, doesn't it? Or it should do.
And, understandably, there's a lot of spotlight on Rig and on Job. And as I say, I did a piece this week talking about why, in my opinion, they'd be mad to leave Sunderland at the minute. Dan Neil's the third member of that triumvirate. He goes under the radar a bit. In fact, if anything, he can be a divisive figure at times. Some supporters at various
stages. Which I think is bonkers, by the way.
Yeah. I've kind of questioned it. I mean, he has had to adapt the way he probably wants to play. He is the deeper lying of those three pretty much all of the time. Sunderland don't have what you would call a natural defensive midfielder in the team. So Neil's having to do a lot of that work. Positionally, he's having to stay deep at times when his natural inclination probably would be to bomb on and push forward more. I'm with you. I don't understand really the criticism that he gets. In fact, I did a column on that earlier this season about how homegrown players just seem to get it for whatever reason. I mean, he's a massively important part of that Sunderland midfield. Arguably the most important of the three, given that he is the one who has the defensive responsibilities.
Well, he lets the other two do what they're good at, doesn't he? Or do what they're best at, probably, in Rig and Bellingham. And I do think it's credit to him. He's only just turned 23. He's already played more than 150 games for Sunderland. I thought it was great when I saw the clip from the weekend of the away fans singing his name at full time, because when you have got the stars around him like Bellingham and Rig and Clark before that and Mundell now, and then Watson comes in, and they're all kind of headline hoggers, aren't they, really? But by Neil doing what he's so good at, he allows those in front to flourish. And it's credit to a player really who's still at the early stage of his career, despite how much football he's played, to be able to adapt to a role as he has done. When, if he was being honest, he'd probably say he'd prefer to play as more of an 8 with more of a license to get forward as well. But he's done it brilliantly this year, hasn't he? I think that word for Labrice as well, to find a way to get those midfielders playing together. But I think also the man management skills involved to talk to a player about having to maybe adapt the game. I mean, we're going through the process now with Mayenda, aren't we? And how he's saying, I'm trying to convince him that he can play on the wing. With Neil, fingers crossed this won't come anytime soon. Not just Neil, but I think that type of player, it's a classic case of when he's not there, you realise just how good he is, how important he is, how much you miss him. Hopefully he won't be going anywhere anytime soon, because he's clearly pivotal to Sunderland.
And that move back, if you like, it tends to be, players tend to make that towards the end of their career, don't they? And they're more willing to buy into it, I think, then. The fact that, as you say, Neil has willingly done that, he has sacrificed parts of his game. We know he's the club captain. We know he's got the Sunderland roots, the Sunderland links and all of that. But I still think fair play to him for doing it so kind of willingly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at a player at that stage of the career, when it shows his maturity and leadership skills, because at that stage of the career, it would be easy for a player to focus on themselves more than the team, or
be the one scoring the goal, be the one creating the chances, be the one getting the headlines. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's done it with no fuss. And he's mastering the art. He looks like that's his position, really, doesn't he? I can't remember what game it was. There was a home game recently where I thought he was immense. And then, as I say, I thought it was great to see him getting the plaudits at the weekend. But, I mean, let's talk about Rig and Bellingham. You wrote that piece earlier this week. Clearly, because of who they are, there's the name there as well, association with both now, isn't there, really?
Yeah,
Bellingham for obvious reasons, Rig because of all the hype surrounding him, all fully deserved. But Neil, by Neil being so good at what he's doing, he's letting Rig and Bellingham shine, or allowing Rig and Bellingham to shine, isn't he, in those more advanced midfield roles?
Yeah, absolutely. He they look at three that just works at the minute, don't they? You know, they have dovetailed pretty well this season. When at the start of the season, it was difficult to see just how the three were going to get in and exactly where they'd fit and stuff. And you know, as you rightly say, Riggin and Bellingham are the sexier ones, if you like. They're the ones getting the headlines. They're the ones who I think, you know, if there is interest in January, it'll come on those two. And it will be interesting to see, not so much what Sunderland do, because I think we know what Sunderland are going to do, which is say they're not for sale, what Rigg and Bellingham do. Because ultimately, as I said in the piece, the reality in modern day football is players dictate what happens in transfer situations 99 times out of 100, really. Yes, as a club, you can dig your heels in, which Sunderland did over Clark to a degree, but you can only do that for a limited amount of time. Eventually, if a player's adamant they want to go, they'll go. I fervently hope that Rigg and Job won't do that. I don't for 1 minute think they will in January. I think the summer might be a different situation if Sunderland haven't gone up. We can get to that when that comes. But, you know, if either Rigg or Job were to be pushing for a move in January just because a Borussia Dortmund came in or a Liverpool came in or a West Ham came in or a Palace came in, whatever, I think that would be really disappointing given just how much they're benefiting from playing week in, week out in this Sunderland team at the minute.
And everything you hear is positive, isn't it? I mean,
it is.
With Joe last season at some point when he talked about how he's just fallen in love with Sunderland. Rigg clearly has talked when he signed his contract and in various other interviews and bits and bobs has talked about how he knows he's in the right place. And it's so hard to value players, isn't it? To put a valuation on, to put a price tag on players. But we tried it in the summer with Bellingham. I remember us talking about it in the summer with Bellingham. Whatever it was then, it's gone north since for both, hasn't it? And it will continue to go north, won't it? Between January and the summer, I can't for 1 minute envisage either leaving in January. I think we'd have to take an absolutely startling offer, which in the era of PSR, I just can't see a Premier League club making in the January window.
January, no.
If Sunderland are 14th or 15th and treading water and going nowhere, then you can imagine a Premier League club thinking this might be our chance here now.
Yeah, that's a different scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, if you're Rigg and Bellingham, you might be playing in the Premier League on Wayside next season, mightn't you?
Yeah.
There's feel-good factor around the club at the minute. They're both clearly pivotal players. I think. I can envisage your famous words. I can envisage January passing kind of quite smoothly where those two are concerned. There'll be speculation and talk, won't there?
Yeah.
I don't think it'll get much further than that in January.
No, I would agree. And like I say, I think a lot of that will come down to the players and their representatives, but everything that you're hearing is there's not an agitation at the moment for either of them to get out of Sunderland like there clearly was with Jack Clark for, 18 months really before he ended up leaving. Let's talk defence, because we said what's Labris going to do when all of his defenders are fit. Well, we kind of got the answer at the weekend, didn't we? Hume at right back, Sirkin at left back, Meffam, Ballard as centre-halves, Luke O'Nien coming off the bench for the last 20 minutes or so, Agiolese, an unused substitute. Is that the pecking order? Is it? I mean, obviously, I know Labris's answer would be it's game by game. There'll be some games where it suits Alesi more. There'll be some games where it suits Sirk, and there'll be some games where it suits. Yeah, fine. If Sunderland were playing a cup final tomorrow or a playoff final, is that the back four? Is that the first choice back four? Do you think now?
I'm going to go back. You said last week O'Nien, I said Ballard and Meffam.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to swap because now I think the manner of just those first 20 minutes, really, the chaotic element, really, of the first 20 minutes or so, I have a feeling he'll bring O'Nien back in at the weekend. I don't know who for. I have no idea. Maybe Ballard, but it's a coin toss. I don't know. I don't know. I have a feeling he might well bring O'Nien back in at the weekend. And I think if it's a cup final or a playoff final, then he plays O'Nien because of everything he brings, because of all that surrounds O'Nien and everything he brings to the team and the dressing room. I think it'll be interesting on Saturday because against Norwich, that the Swansea was probably the first indication. But then it didn't go to plan. This Sunderland team that have been so solid defensively weren't in the early stages at Swansea. So Labris isn't a panicker, is he? But I think what he does in the defence on Saturday will give us a real insight into his thinking. What do you think he'll do on Saturday?
Yeah, I think he'll probably bring 09 back as well.
Those two fullbacks are set now, aren't they? Now Sirkin's back in, they're set. It's.
I think they are, although I think over Christmas there'll at least be one game where Lacey starts.
Yeah.
I don't think, and that's partly because Sirkin has had injury issues off and on for a fair while now. And, I don't think, he's only been back a couple of weeks. I don't think Lebris will want to play Sirkin. What have Sunderland got? I think they've got 5 games between now and the first weekend in January. I don't think Sirkin plays all 5. I mean, to be fair, they'll be potentially, do the likes of Rigg and Job play all 5 of them? You'd say yes, but it's a big workload. I don't think Sirkin will. I think Hume probably will, because let's be honest, there's not really much of a plan B in terms of right back. And as we've said, that's something that might get looked back in January. The 3 centre halves feel like they could chop and change to a degree, don't they? Or with 09 probably being the one who comes in and drops out and comes in and drops out. I think 09 might start at the weekend, yeah. But I wonder if it will be for Metham.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I think that's going into the game on Saturday. The fixtures are running across the bottom there. That's the interesting one from the team selection side of things, isn't it? Mayenda's going to get a run, isn't he? On the flank.
Well, everything else feels like it picks itself, doesn't it? You're not going to change the midfield 3 unless you have to at the minute. I know Roberts has been taken out on occasion, but I think Roberts starts. Clearly, at the minute, it's Isidore through the middle and Mayanda on the left. Lebris feels like he's going to give that a few run of games just to see how that beds in and what happens there. So I don't see that 6 changing. Clearly, Patterson doesn't change unless you have to. So I think the only decision is 09 and maybe a Lacey.
You mentioned Hume there and right backs. Timothée Pembele has been talking in France this week.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen that interview where he said he was fed up of playing for Sunderland's under-21s and was surprised he got a move to the French top tier when Le Havre came in for him in the summer. There's no option to make that deal permanent in the summer, but I think it'd be more of a surprise if he came back to Sunderland and had a future at Sunderland rather than made the switch, be it to the club where he's on loan this season or elsewhere.
Well, I think there were a couple of under-21 games when the people around Sunderland were fed up with watching him, never mind him being fed up with playing. I mean, yeah, it feels like one where bridges to a large extent have been burned there, probably on both sides, to be fair. It's hard to see Pembele coming back and having any kind of Sunderland future, isn't it?
And Trey Ogunsuyi has been in the news this week. It's suggestions that Liverpool are having a watch. Well, it would be no surprise if Liverpool or other Premier League clubs are watching him, would it? Because he is scoring prolifically in the youth ranks.
And he scored in the Youth Cup defeat to Derby last night. We're recording this on, God, get me days right. It's Wednesday, isn't it? Wednesday morning. Whenever you get anywhere near Christmas, days just go out the window, but it is Wednesday morning. So he scored last night. That was his 15th of the season in all competitions, which is a remarkable record. Already a Belgian under-18 international. Yeah, it's one of them, isn't it? Where to a large extent, he's staring you at the face. Premier League clubs wouldn't be doing their job right, scouts, if they weren't fully aware of what Ogunsuyi's doing and have been watching him and are getting interest. The fact that it's Liverpool is interesting. I mean, increasingly, certainly in the last couple of years, Liverpool have very much gone down the route of trying to pilfer the best young talent from right across the country to kind of flesh out their under-18, under-21 ranks. I mean, they're getting near to Chelsea in the depth of talent and the number of players they have out on loan and all of that. So that's clearly a model that their owners are kind of vigorously pursuing. So again, the fact it's Liverpool is not massively surprising. Ogunsuyi signed his first professional deal this January. And while the actual length of the deal wasn't disclosed, it was described by Sunderland as a long-term deal. And I'm told that, you're talking a number of years that he's tied down for. So Sunderland are in a good bargaining position. As ever, though, with these things, I think a lot of it will come down to the player and what he wants and where his head's at and all that kind of stuff, if Liverpool actually do firm up with an offer. It's an interesting one, Ogunsuyi, because clearly Sunderland, we know more than arguably any club in the country are lock, stock and barrel behind giving youth a chance, promoting from within. So in that respect, he's at an absolutely great club. They're hardly awash with centre forwards. So, it's not like the route to the first team is completely blocked. He's probably just at that slightly awkward point in his career, though, where he's clearly not quite first team ready yet, is he? He's only 18. Yes, Watson's come in. Yes, Riggs come in. You get the impression that Lebris doesn't think that he's at that kind of level yet, because while he's been an unused sub, he hasn't made his senior debut yet. It feels like he's still a little bit off the first team. So, is he going to play much first team football at Sunderland in the next 6 to 12 months? You'd say probably not. Clearly, if he goes to Liverpool, he's not going to be playing first team football there in the next 6 to 12 months either. But, I guess he would be part of a Premier League setup and all that things that goes round with it. So I think Sunderland are going to have to handle his development pretty carefully and, make him feel that there is a viable route to first team football at Sunderland in the next year or so. And I think if they do that, then again, you'd like to think, given the environment he's in, that he would say, okay, well, I'm well suited by staying here, even if Liverpool want me.
And he's not 18 until next week. So he's only 17. He's already been on the bench on 3 occasions in the Championship this season. Isn't that an indicator of that he's in the path to the first team? And also, when you look at Rigg and Watson and Sunderland's handling with them, we interviewed Watson after the Stoke game, and he was talking about how he's felt ready for a little while. Players often say that, don't they? Even though Rigg made his debut when he was 15, I suspect he probably thought that he should have been playing more regularly 6 months before he did last season and this season. But he only has to look at them two, doesn't he, for Sunderland's handling with young players and how he is in the right place to get first-team opportunities?
Yeah, and I think Lebris will come into this a lot as well, because, Lebris's entire kind of back catalogue is about youth development and working with young players and knowing when to promote them, but also knowing how to handle players who think they should be playing when he doesn't really think they're ready. So I think Lebris will have a big part to play in this. And I think he's a major asset for Sunderland in terms of holding on to someone like Ogunsuyi, because I think, he will be able to speak to him from a position of real authority and experience to say, look, just trust me in this. I know what's best for you. This is what we're doing. This is the plan. This is when we'll feed you in, blah, blah, blah. And you'd like to think that a young player will take all of that on board and think, do you know what? This is the best place for me. I'm going to learn here, and I will get the chance when I'm ready. And
it feels like he's likely to be on the bench at some point over the Christmas period, I think, doesn't it? He's been on the bench 3 times now this season. The last game was the Millwall away game. Well, that would have been a baptism of fire if he'd been thrown on there from the bench, wouldn't it? But he hasn't been in the squad for the last 5 games. But obviously there's been the injury to Watson since. Mayenda, a striker option, has been moved out the flank, which takes a forward option from the bench. So I don't think it'd be a great surprise if we saw him at least in the squad over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I agree. And that FA Cup third round game feels very much like a game where he could maybe be on the bench and come on. I mean, we saw what Lebris did at Preston in the first round of the Carabao Cup, didn't we? That he changed every player. I fully expect FA Cup third round day to be a day when it's a shadow Sunderland team off the back of what will have been a manic Christmas period. So it wouldn't be a surprise at all if Ogunsuyi was on the bench for that game and got a run out for the last 20 minutes or so. And then, he's a first team debutant and he's away and running and et cetera, et cetera. That would feel to me like a logical possibility.
I fully hope for everyone in attendance.
Unless we've got 7 new strikers through the door, of course, in the first week of January. Christian,
there was plenty to talk about.
Left, right, and centre.
I fully hope for everyone in attendance that Stoke FA Cup game is more memorable than the Preston Carabao Cup tie. Oh my God! First
and warmer than the last game against Stoke.
Oh yeah. Right then, fixtures running through the bottom. Norwich this weekend, Blackburn away Boxing Day, Stoke away December the 29th. There's a dream double of games over the Christmas period. Sheffield United home, Portsmouth home. What do you reckon this weekend, Norwich?
I think it'll be a good game. I think Norwich, probably more than any other team in the Championship at the minute, just want to play. they'll while we've talked about teams coming up to Sunderland with a bit more of a plan and being defensive, I don't think Norwich will. I think they will come on the front foot. They'll look to play football. I think it'll be an open and entertaining game. I think that suits Sunderland. 2-1 Sunderland.
There's been 20
maybe
goals.
2-2, but I'll go 2-1 Sunderland. I think it'll be open, and I think it'll be attacking. I think it'll be a good watch.
I've just looked there. There's been 20 goals in Norwich's last 4 games.
Yeah.
So I'll go nil-nil. I'll go nil-nil at the Stadium of Light this weekend.
It doesn't feel like they've got a manager or a squad that can really turn that on its head and say, right, we're going to shut up shop and not play like that. They seem to, they seem to want to play that way, and they seem to only really be able to play that way. So I think it'll be a good game. Yeah. Like I say, for whatever reason, I have the back of my head 2-2, but I'll go 2-1 Sunderland. You?
To save me having to chop up that last bit, there hasn't been 20 goals in the last 4 games. I missed the last 2 games. So there's been 20 goals in the 4 games prior to the last 2 games, which included a 0-0 against Portsmouth. So that kind of defeats the
For me, haven't said that they can only play one way, yeah. Yeah.
No,
get the XG up for that game. Lots of missed chances.
But they are a bit, I mean, when you looked at, they lost at home to Burnley, but they were 1-0 up, weren't they? And it was a worldie from Burnley that got them back on level terms at Carrow Road at the weekend. Then the draw at Portsmouth before that. Well, I know Portsmouth are struggling, but they've just shown signs of pulling the finger out a bit before they got thumped at Derby at the weekend. Then before that, they got a good hiding at QPR, but beat Luton, beat Plymouth 6-1 and got a 2-2 draw at West Brom. I know everyone draws at West Brom, but where do you start with that? There's such a mixed bag in assessing Norwich, which sums up their season so far, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it absolutely does. I know the championship's a championship, but the Boxing Day game looks tough for Sunderland, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I know there's going to be 7,000 going over there. It's going to be hell of an atmosphere, but I mean, Blackburn are on fire at the minute. So, we keep on saying it, but I guess that makes the Norwich result that little bit more important, because you probably want to be going into Christmas and going to Ewood Park with, a positive result under your belt. But hey, Sunderland, there's absolutely no reason why Sunderland can't get that at the weekend. They're going into it full of confidence. You're up at Labrissa's presser tomorrow, but as we sit here, we're certainly not aware of any major injury issues or anything. You'd feel like the side should be pretty much bang at full strength, or at least full strength without the long termers. So, I fancy Sunderland, but I do think Norwich will come and have a go, and I think defensively Sunderland will be asked probably different type of questions than often they're asked at the Stadium of Light when it's a case of teams looking to break on them. I think Norwich will look to be more front foot than that.
Yeah, I think it will. I think they will. I fancy Sunderland too. I think 2-1, maybe 2-3-1. You take a point at Blackburn, don't you, on Boxing Day? I think the point's a great result.
Yeah.
Liverpool Park, they've won 6 in a row now. Stoke away might be tricky as well, and then Sheffield United at home, so it has the look of a pivotal
good run, yeah. It's an interesting game, isn't it?
But yeah, I fancy Sunderland 3-1. Ogunsuyi off the bench to score a late goal. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. A shout, as ever, as we said at the start, to our partners, the Fans Museum and Cospex Opticians. Enjoy the game on Saturday if you're there. If we don't speak again before Christmas, we'll have to work out our plans for the start next week. But have a lovely Christmas. We will fit a video in at some point over the festive period, obviously assessing the games and looking ahead to the fixtures to come. But do subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Get in touch in the comments or on social media if you're listening on your podcast platforms, and rate and review as well. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a lovely Christmas. Here's hoping for 3 points at the Stadium of Light this weekend. Take care.